Good morning, everybody. This is Man Coverage with Knoxville Nate and James P. Bonneville coming to you live on Sunday, October 1st. Week 5 of college football going down. We had some more pretty interesting football games that we are going to break down for you today. We have a special guest. We have a live broadcast coming to you from Colorado Springs, Colorado, after James hit up the Air Force Academy's game last night to do a little live scouting. We're going to break that down. James, how you doing over there in the forest? You look good.
I'm tired. I'm not gonna lie. I'm tired, but it's beautiful as all get out here. It's no doubt about it. It's a lot of fun. I can tell you that.
You look like the Smokey Bear that tells you not to start forest fires. I keep waiting for you to hold up a sign and be like, "Put your fires out, folks." Lots of redwoods back there.
Oh,
But
it's awesome out here.
it's gorgeous, dude. And we nobody's talking about it, but another good game from the Falcons. So we are going to talk about it today. As we're gonna talk a little bit about some teams that maybe are a little bit overrated and some teams that are underrated. So think about that, James. I want to have you. I'm going to throw some names at you, and I want you to tell me whether you think they're overrated as they stand right now or underrated.
Yeah,
Based on your opinions. Obviously, people are going to have different opinions, but I want yours. So we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about all the games, and then we've got a special guest who we're going to bring on today as well. So full show here on Man Coverage. This is why I love college football, man. I mean, it's so fun to watch. There's so many amazing games every week, and I think we got to start, I guess, with the Irish. I was
yeah,
kind of expecting a little bit of a letdown, potentially after that hard fought Ohio State game, which I will admit could have really gone either way. And then they went, down into the belly of the beast, where Durham somehow has turned into a tough place to play.
yeah.
And it's a good, well coached football team there with Duke, and obviously, a good quarterback. And Notre Dame, started off strong, was I believe up 14-0, and then or 13, is it 13-0?
13-0. Yeah,
13-0, excuse me. And then Duke mounted their comeback. Didn't end up being enough, but I got to admit I was impressed by both of these football teams. Notre Dame walked away with the victory 21-14. James, what did you think about this kind of ACC showdown?
well, I look at Mike Elko's teams, and they just have a different identity. I mean, they were down 13-0. I mean, heck, in the third quarter, and you never used to see that kind of um, pushback where they're not going to lay down. Prior teams would have laid down and just, gone away. And this Duke team just getting back into the game, having to lead late. I mean, it just shows what in the small time Mike Elko is at Duke so far. He has really transformed the culture of the Blue Devils as a whole. I mean, when in your lifetime have you ever said going to Wallace Wade Stadium was going to be a tough out? I mean, it was one of those
Uh,
stadiums people hated to go to because, heck, the visitors' locker room didn't even have air conditioning.
Yeah, not only that, but it never really used to be filled up. I mean, they
Now,
would even some years where they had some decent teams and played, semi good football, they would have trouble
yeah,
getting people to go. I
yeah,
mean, let's be honest. Duke is a basketball school. It still is a basketball school. However, this guy is the real deal in coaching. My question to you, and we're going to break down this game here just a second, but my question to you is: let's say this year ends up, we don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback as he got banged up at the end of the game. So that could really affect the outcome. But I know people are taking notice of this. How long do you think this guy stays at Duke? Do you think he continues to be there and build this thing? Or do you think he goes for greener pastures?
Well, I mean, honestly, his name is already being floated out there for the Michigan State job, and
Right.
everybody else has a connection to that school. He doesn't. He is going to be the flashy name, kind of like Lance Leopold was last year. I, I don't know. I mean, quite frankly, I think this ACC TV contract is not helping matters
Right.
because Duke is not going to have the money to play with the SEC schools or the Big Ten schools. But at the same time, I think he can be a little picky and choosy too, as well, if he does want to leave. I mean, there is a thing of staying and building some, continuing building something you've already started. It's trying to rebuild every single time doesn't work. Does the team buy into your culture? Do you nail that recruiting class? I mean, honestly, I think there's certain jobs, like if A&M came opened, I would guess Mike Elko is gone. But right now,
if which job?
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M.
Because he had that connection to them in the past. But
yeah.
I mean, it all depends which jobs I think are coming open right now. And I don't think we got a really good idea quite yet which jobs they are.
No, I just meant if something good becomes available, he gets it offered to him. Do you think he goes or not? So that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah.
And we'll see. It depends. I agree with you. I think it depends what job. I think it depends how their season ends. All those things are going to play in. But this guy's proven to be an amazing coach, in my opinion. Just the way he's won at Duke, the way that this team plays. I mean, they're just not an easy out anymore. This team puts up a fight no matter who it is. Clemson comes to town. Notre Dame comes to town. It doesn't really matter who it is. They're going to put up a pretty damn good fight. And I like watching this team play. They're gritty. They play good, hard-nosed defense. I like this quarterback. He kind of was more of a running quarterback here against Notre Dame with his 18 carries for 88 yards, almost 5 yards a pop, but pretty impressive. I have to give credit to Notre Dame and to the Irish. Like I said, I thought there might be a little bit of a letdown after the Ohio State game, but they played tough. Even when Duke popped them in the mouth in the second half and started to come back, they did that. They had a kind of a signature drive there where they showed up, and they had some guys missing. They had a couple of wide receivers out, and a couple of injuries they were dealing with, and still they came back and won this game. So kudos to Coach Freeman and the Irish for getting it done. But I want to move on to a game that I believe was Friday night.
Yes.
A very interesting game out west. Last week, we talked about our sleeper teams. I had Duke as one of them. They lost. Then I had Utah as one of them, and they lost. But I've got to give myself a little bit of backing here because I thought that Cam Rising might play again. And, we keep hearing, he may be ready this week. Oh, he may be ready next week. But yet here we are entering week 6, and we still have yet to see him. And it finally caught up to them as they lost to Oregon State 21-7 on Friday night. This is a big loss for Utah, in my opinion, because they were playing pretty well, even though he wasn't there. But this was more than just missing Cam Rising. I mean, Nate Johnson, 8 of 23. That wasn't good.
When you have a QBR under 10, you're in trouble. You know?
That's not good. When you complete 8 passes all day and you're not playing for a service academy, that's not a good thing. And DJU, continues to be a winner, and not the greatest numbers ever, but still a pretty good performance. I'm pretty impressed with the way that Oregon State bounced back. What did you think of this game? 21-7 victory for Oregon State over Utah.
I think Oregon State's their game plan going into this game was defensively was amazing. Just keep putting pressure on the quarterback over and over and over. I mean, what I feel about Jonathan Smith. I think he is. I mean, as good a job as what Mike Elko's done at Duke, I think Jonathan Smith has done a greater job resurrecting the Oregon State Beavers, and the timing couldn't be more perfect with everything going down in the Pac-12 or now the Tupac. I mean, it's people, I think, were a little down on them if they lost last week. But, I mean, hell, they put up 35 and lost to Washington State. That's nothing to sneeze about. Washington State's a quality program. But, man, it was blitz after blitz, and they changed those. I mean, the blitz packages were looking different every single time. I mean, it was Johnson and Barnes were just back there just getting killed.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. But a very interesting game. that I got to watch. And I got to be honest, I was listening to your boys Barrett Salee again this morning, and they both said him and Tom Lugenbuger both were saying that they had predicted that the Pac Tupac was going to be the best conference this year. I was like, man, I must have missed that show.
I must have too.
I never heard them say that once, but they both said that somebody called in and was like, can you believe how good the Pac-2 is and how amazing the Pac-2 is this year and how they're getting it done. And they're like, oh, we're not surprised. We knew this. We called this. I was like, no, you didn't. I listen to the show all the time. That's a outright lie. And I didn't call it either. I mean, we talked about how we were impressed with the coaches that have gone in to the Pac-12 and Chip Kelly taking over at UCLA. Obviously, we've mentioned also Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. The coaching jobs at Utah, just keeps getting better. All these teams, obviously, we've been impressed with at different times, but to have them all kind of hit together at once, nobody predicted it, and those guys definitely did not. So they can take credit for it, but.
You look at the conference from top to bottom. I mean, yeah, are there some bottom dweller teams? Yeah, but teams are not talking about as much. Colorado is light years better than it was last year. Cal's offense looks like it has a pulse. I mean, usually putting up 20 points at Cal was like an act of Congress. Now it's after Jake Spavital comes in there. They've had a 50-point offensive game, which is freaking shocking for Cal. I mean, Arizona State with all their troubles, they are playing, I think, ahead of schedule. So, I mean, this conference as a whole is really upgraded.
I agree. Arizona State is surprised. I did not expect them to have a big season after what all went down with your boy from the Jets, who kind of ran that program into the ground out there. Oh. And
I like Herm, but I mean, some of the recruiting stuff was like, where was their administration and all that? I mean, seriously.
Well, it's so weird. Like, you're Herm Edwards, man. I mean, you're on TV. You're on TV for 10 years. You coached the Jets. Like, this guy was a big time NFL player. Like, you didn't need to cheat. Guys were going to come there for you and the staff that he had. He had a pretty impressive staff with a couple former players and a couple of respected coaches. I didn't really understand that. That was kind of weird. But let's stay out in the Pac-12 right now, because there was another game that wasn't really supposed to be this close. But, still was a hyped up game because of all the hoopla surrounding Colorado. And obviously Caleb Williams coming in. Gus Johnson and Joel Flatclat. We're giving Caleb Williams the Heisman in the third quarter. They're like, he had a public cry to viewers and voters that if you, wouldn't vote for Caleb Williams just because he won the year before, that you're wrong and that you need to vote for him. And then Colorado almost came back and won. So how about watching the damn game that you're doing and maybe let it end before you start handing freaking awards out? Pissed me off because, he's sitting there talking about how great Caleb Williams is, which he is good. Not saying he's not. But you got to give credit to Colorado after a rough week, missing Shiloh Sanders, missing Travis Hunter, and they damn near came back and won this game. What did you think about Colorado's effort against USC, and what does this say about the Trojans moving forward?
Well, I think this says a lot about Coach Prime and how he's building this team. I mean, you look at last week against Oregon, and Oregon's very physical at the point of contact. At the line of scrimmage. And my thought process, because let's be honest, they really got beat down hard.
Yes.
Would you see that same kind of mindset when USC got up on them this time? And they didn't. I mean, the comeback alone, ESPN running about USC struggles to win. You score 48-41 against a good team. The thing that really hit me was that receiver, that Omarion Miller from Louisiana.
Freshman.
Oh, wow. I mean, not only was Coach Prime holding him out for academic reasons, but look what he did coming into the situation. Like, first game he's played, 7 catches, 196. His great speed, great change of direction. I was really impressed. Like, I see this team really maturing from game to game. They look more the part of that. And I think, honestly, they should be ranked again.
I do too. If you're going to rank USC that high, then you need to give Colorado the credit. And you got to give, I know people are giving Prime credit. Obviously, they talk about him all the time, but you have to. I mean, this is a 1-11 team last year that had no pulse. And this year, they had a really good shot if they could have gotten the ball. I mean, they scored 14 points in the fourth quarter to cut the lead to 7. And, I give Shadur a lot of credit too, because some people were, talking about him after that Oregon game. Like, maybe you should worry more about the games than your cars. And, just some bull crap that, he didn't really deserve considering how he's played. I mean, he got roughed up in that Oregon game, but the whole team did. That wasn't really just him. And he comes back and throws 4 touchdowns, also ran a long 25-yard touchdown to kind of get the scoring going for the Buffs. Was very impressed with Colorado and their performance. I know they lost, but that was more. I think this game was more about Colorado than it was USC.
That's why I kept seeing the highlights the headlines come across, and I'm like, man, that was a better game. They made it sound like it was just like USC stumbled into a win. I mean, Colorado there's a mindset this team has. They know they're better than before, and they're going bowling this year. I mean, just mark it down. They're going bowling, which I agree. I mean, that alone should give, in my opinion, Coach Prime the freaking Pac-12 Coach of the Year minimum.
Yeah, I already we said this months ago. I said if he wins 6 games, he is the Coach of the Year, and they're going to win 6 games the way they're playing. And I'm worried about the Trojans with the way that their defense is playing. That secondary is hot garbage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There was guys just running down the field wide open. And kudos to the freshman kid, but should a freshman who's playing in his first game in Power 5 football be allowed to just run free? He's got speed, he's got the skills, but still somebody should have been behind him, especially after about the 3rd catch where he was running free down the sideline. So they got some issues.
USC is going to lose a game this year or 2.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, honestly, I think they're going to lose to Notre Dame. I mean,
I do too. I think Notre Dame is more physical than them on offensive line and defensive lines. I think Notre Dame definitely has a good shot of beating them if they can slow Caleb Williams down, which is easier said than done. But don't you have to beat somebody good before you get the Heisman? Don't you have to win something? Don't you have to do? I mean, I thought that's what the whole point of the Heisman is: the best player in college football, not the guy that racks up the most stats in meaningless Pac-12 games, which is this guy does.
I mean, you don't win Heisman's in September, but you can lose them.
Correct.
And how I go back to the Kyler Murray Heisman year. No one was talking about Kyler Murray until November. And it's not like his game changed that much. It's just the exposure changed that much. And quite frankly, I don't think we've got that team out there, that guy out there who's really cutting it through, because everybody is so focused on the Pac-12 explosion and all this. I mean, do I still think Caleb Williams is a pretty good chance? Yeah, but he's got to come to play in November. Stats are better, but this game isn't about stats. Otherwise, why play the games?
Yeah, that's why that's all he kept talking about during the broadcast was, his stats are better this year. His stats are better this year. Well, his stats were good last year, but he lost to Utah twice. Yeah. So, it doesn't matter how many yards you throw for it if you can't beat the Utes. And that to me, that kind of rings true this year as well. And another guy who, I guess has a shot at it, but whether or not he's ready to go, I'm not sure. I certainly think this game was won more because of Jonathan Brooks than Quinn Ewers, but Texas hold serve, missing their quarterback, I think killed Kansas in my opinion.
Yeah.
The backup Jason Bean filling in for Daniels, 9 of 21 for 136 yards. Didn't have the 9 QBR, but 17.2 isn't real good either. What did you think about Texas taking care of business 40-14 over Kansas?
This was an impressive win for the Longhorns. Sorry, the place we're staying at, the dog next door wants to play catch with me while I'm doing the show. It is the fun of doing a show outside. I was impressed that we haven't seen Texas pull a Texas in some time, where they go
Right.
into a game and this is the game that Texas is finally back, and they go out there and lay the big egg. And
Mhm.
this, I was impressed how they came out, inflicted their will, and made the game their own. I mean, Kansas is a darling right now, and they really held them down quite a bit.
Yeah, they did. They kind of dominated this game. From start to finish, jumped up 10-0, and never really took their foot off the gas. And to be able to run the football like that, Jonathan Brooks, 21 carries,
Yeah,
218 yards. This team ran for over 335 yards in this game and ran for 4 touchdowns. That to me was what I took away most from the Texas victory. 336 on the ground, 4 touchdowns. That to me was pretty impressive.
I mean, when Sarkisian came into Austin, there was a realistic problem with that offensive line. There just wasn't that toughness that they once had. And that was the first thing he worked on. And they look considerably better. I mean, they were winning recruiting battles that they would lose in the past in the line of scrimmage. And it shows. I mean, 336 on the ground, like you said, 6'6" average per
Yeah.
carry. I mean, you're sitting in very few 3rd and long situations. You're probably sitting 3rd and 1 at worst, if not getting the first down. So, I mean,
Correct.
you're going to see the naysayers. Well, Jaden Daniels didn't play. Jason Beam is a very good quarterback and got quite a bit of playing time last year. I mean, he did win games for him last year. But
Yeah, I was just saying that Daniels can do things that he can't. That's all I meant. I mean, he is the guy. We saw that game last year. I'm forgetting who they were playing, that they went into like 4 or 5 overtimes, and it was just like Daniels willing Kansas to try and win, and that's something he can do that this guy can't. But I'm not saying that's the reason they lost. That's the reason maybe that it wasn't closer, but that's not the reason that they lost. Texas dominated them up front.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I looked at Texas' schedule on the way out, and it's pretty. I mean, they're going to talk about Red River rivalry, but honestly, I look at their schedule, and I think their hardest game's the last one of the year. Or I think they take that back when they play Kansas State on the 4th of November. But the rest of their schedule's really not that tough. They play all the right games at home.
They've got the easiest, probably the easiest route of any of these contenders, in my opinion.
Well, Georgia.
The rest of the way. Well, yeah, but Georgia seems to struggle with everybody right now. So I'm not sure. And they have to play Tennessee, and they'll have to play the SEC championship game. So I would much rather beat Texas than Georgia right now.
Yeah.
You agree?
Oh, yeah. It's the Georgia game was just like, what the hell? I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was privately hoping Georgia would lose because
you're not the only one there, bud.
I just don't. They're getting their ranking based on reputation from the past.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask you about that, because every season we always hear, preseason rankings, all that crap that everyone says, last year doesn't matter and last year shouldn't count towards this year. That's a lie, because if last year didn't count, then Georgia wouldn't be ranked number 1. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, because they haven't lost in 3 years. So, you got to take that into account. But I'm saying lots of times people say we're not going to take that into account. We're just looking at this year only. Well, that's BS, because if you were just looking at this year only, they wouldn't be ranked number 1. They're ranked number 1 because they've won 30-something games in a row. Don't you agree?
Well, I mean, hell, look at Miami. Preseason, they always get overranked because there's this they got this belief that Ed Reed, Michael Irvin, and Alonzo Highsmith and the Blades brothers are going to come walking out of the freaking locker room, and they're not. I mean, are they better than what they once were? Yeah, but this isn't Miami of Jimmy Johnson and Larry Coker and Dennis Erickson. This is a different time period. We got to look at it from year to year rather than looking at, well, they were good once. We really hope they can come back. Let's overrank them again. I mean, heck, Ole Miss shouldn't have been ranked last week when they got curb stomped by freaking Alabama. now they're going to get ranked again because they beat an LSU team that, let's guess what, not that good.
Yeah. In fact, they said they were still ranked 20th, which kind of surprised me, but apparently they were. I guess just because there aren't that many good SEC teams, so they got to find somebody to put in the rankings. There's a quota. There's definitely a quota, and Ole Miss filled their quota. But I will give them some credit. After a rough game against Bama, they could have folded in this game, pretty easily, and wouldn't have shocked me. I mean, LSU was up pretty big in the third quarter, and then Ole Miss came back and dropped 21 points in the fourth. Pretty impressed with Jackson Dart, 26-39 for 389, 4 touchdowns, no picks, and we finally got to see Judkins come out of his slumber and showed up. 33 carries, 177 yards, and a touch. We've been waiting for that, and finally they found a way to get him rolling. But pretty impressive win to me. I know LSU might not be quite as good as people were making them out to be, but still a pretty impressive win for Ole Miss. This pretty much ends the LSU college football playoff talk finally, don't you think?
I don't know how it started. I mean, granted, they played way above their heads, but I mean, when I kept seeing these rankings in the top 10, I'm like, how? Like, their running game is questionable, their passing game is predictable, and their defense isn't what it once was. Unless there's a different team in their locker room, I don't know. I mean, does Odell Beckham Jr. still have some eligibility left? I mean,
not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I told you before that I wasn't that impressed with their skill guys. This was the best game that they've played in a long time from an offensive perspective. I mean, putting up 49 points. I can't remember the last time they did this. They had 2 guys go over 100 yards, and Brian Thomas Jr. and also Neighbors both went over 100 yards receiving, and then they had 2 guys that were right there at 100 yards rushing if you include the quarterback. So pretty good offensive output, but still, as Brian Kelly mentioned, he thought they were still a year away, and I agreed with him. No one at SECPN agreed with him, but I did.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, how can you have that much turnover and not have some hiccups along the way? It's not plug and play. That's for damn sure.
Nope. We got to talk real quick. We're going to get to this Air Force game next, but I just wanted to throw out one more time. Pretty sure Jalen Milroe won again. I don't know if you saw the results, but he won again as the starter for Alabama. Put up 40 points against a not great Mississippi State team, but still, he's Bama's whole offense. So I hope the quarterback controversy is squashed in Tuscaloosa, don't you?
I think it is. I mean, how other than the pulling of Jalen Hurts for Tua, have you ever seen Saban do that? Like that?
No. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I was kind of shocked when after one not great game and one loss, he goes and pulls the guy that he had chosen as the starter and then replaces him with 2 clowns. I was actually very, very shocked by that and still am.
Yeah, it's very untypical of him to do that. But I mean, Milroe looked much more confident. Like you could tell this was a 5th game of the year. He had much more confidence in the pocket. I mean, he is who he is, but
I almost felt like he was doing that just for the fans. I almost feel like there's no way that Nick Saban went out to that practice field and was like, "Oh, Tyler Buchner gives us the best chance to win."
Unless Nick Saban was really drunk that day, or maybe Tommy Rees was really like, "Give my kid a chance." Tyler Buchner to Alabama still is one of those that just kind of like I scratch my head. I'm like, what are you doing? You just, this is maybe a time you may want to hang it up because it just isn't there. But
yeah, you weren't going to start at Notre Dame, and I didn't think he was going to start at Bama either. He ended up getting one, but that was I'm still scratching my head about it. Let's talk about the game that you were at,
yeah,
and the spot that you still are. This is a team that is now 5-0, 3-0 in the Mountain West Conference. I'm talking about the Falcons there at Air Force. They put up 49 points, and I was kind of talking about the offense, and you're like, hold your roll there, buddy. I was more impressed with the defense. Talk to us a little bit about the victory for Air Force over San Diego State, and how good are the Falcons in your estimation?
they're for real. I mean, hell, first off, they're an academy program, which the discipline's going to be there because, hell, it's part of the tradition that they have at in Colorado Springs and Annapolis and West Point. But I'm really impressed with this defense. Like literally no first downs until right at the end when San Diego State's trying just to push something off. They so disciplined and don't catch on bad breaks. They don't make the stupid mistake of going for the big hit. It's all about keeping everything in front of them, and their safeties, man, this safety group is a very good group that people are not talking about it. And I could see Trey Taylor, one of their bellwether on that safety crew, getting drafted in this upcoming draft. Is he going to get the amount of hype with the fans going into it? No. I mean, probably, if he gets invited to the Senior Bowl or the Combine, which I fully expect is going to happen. But this is a guy who really understands good breaks and reads quarterbacks exceedingly well. I mean, because I can't think this safety class, draft class, I don't think it's going to be that great as a whole. I think it's going to be very, very not deep at all. So
Yeah, I agree. And, this is a team in Air Force that nobody's really talking about, but 49-10, they seem to have found, another one. They've had some great quarterbacks through the years, Bo Morgan, D. Dowis, all the guys that you can think about back through the years. And it looks like they found another guy. I mean, 6 of 7 yesterday. 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then also, ran for over 100 yards. Seems to be one of those guys that can kind of spark the offense, which they've kind of had in the past.
Yeah, I mean, the patience they have in waiting, getting that corner set, and just owning having the outside really helps them. I mean, they're just so disciplined in their blocking schemes, and once they get outside, if you don't contain the edge, they're gonna wrap up some yards on you.
I agree. Before we're going to bring on our guest in just 1 second. Before we do, I want to talk to you just 1 second. I'm going to throw out some team names to you, and I want you to tell me whether or not this team is overrated or underrated. Okay.
Yeah.
And just what first thing that pops in your mind? What do you think about this team as far as their ranking and their chances of making the college football playoff? And obviously, I'm going to start with the team up north and what you think about them. Pretty nice win for them yesterday, 45-7 over Nebraska, who still sucks. But do you think Michigan, who was ranked number 2 going into yesterday? Are they overrated or underrated at this point?
I'd like to add a third category and say they're rated.
Right where they're supposed to be?
I think they're right where they're supposed to be. I think they're a little high because they really haven't shown anything. But at the same time, do they have to show anything? Their schedule's been pretty pedestrian, to say the least.
Yeah, Georgia and Michigan have about the 2 easiest schedules that I've ever seen. Let's go through it real quick. East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska. That's who we've got so far. And the next 3 are Minnesota, Indiana, Michigan State, and then Purdue. So, I fully expect them to be undefeated going into Penn State, don't you?
Agreed.
Okay, so let's move on from them because I hate talking about them. Let's go to that team we just mentioned, Penn State. Struggled mightily in the first half against Northwestern. Everybody was ready to give Penn State the college football playoff bid, but they did struggle yesterday. Drew Aller was not quite as good as he's been What did you think about Penn State? Are they overrated right now? Are they underrated? Or are they where they're supposed to be?
I think they're where they're supposed to be. I think if they're going to make that college football playoff, though, their line of scrimmage play has got to get better. I mean, that was supposed to be one of their strengths going into this year. And you watch that West Virginia game, they just didn't seem cohesive at all. And they made West Virginia's defensive line, who's solid, but this offensive line for Penn State is pretty legit. And it makes me wonder what's going on there. So if they can get that, I could see Penn State realistically making the CFP, though.
Yeah, we'll see. I was thinking they might have a chance till I watched them yesterday, and they looked rough. I mean, I know they came out and played well in the second half, but that first half was brutal. Let's talk about two more teams that nobody's really mentioning, and that is a couple of still undefeateds, and that's Mizzou. Got to be honest with you, I had no idea that Missouri would start off 5-0 this year. Where do you think they're at? They're ranked now 23. What do you think about them?
If anybody said that if there was a betting line for Missouri to be 5-0 now, I'm guessing they're a pretty wealthy person.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Missouri just either their offense looks good or their defense looks bad. Like nothing ever looked put together. And that K-State game really surprised me because they came out and punched them. Chris Kleiman led team who's always very disciplined in the mouth and won. I mean, they beat Vanderbilt. It's not like they've had the greatest schedule of all time, but still, you and I both know. Do I think they can beat Missouri? I mean, LSU? Yeah. Kentucky? I think Kentucky is where you're going to see that first L, though.
Yeah, well, that was another team I was going to ask you about is Kentucky. What do you think about them? Because they play Georgia next week, and I'm sorry, but I just can't buy it. Kentucky always starts off 6-0, 7-0, ranked in the top 10, and then they play Tennessee, they play Georgia, they play whoever, and they lose like 4 out of their last 6 most every year. So I guess I got to see it to believe it. What do you believe it?
They're not going to make the CFP.
I'm aware of that, but are they a top 10 team in your mind?
No.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I didn't think so either, but last team, Fresno State, another team that's 5-0. Beat a bad Nevada team yesterday, but they are 5-0. What do you think about Fresno?
Well, you know I'm a big Jeff Tedford fan.
I do.
I mean, he just finds a way to win every time he coaches there. Very disciplined. It's, I mean, you look at them and Air Force is going to be an interesting matchup if it gets to the Mountain West Championship.
Yeah, I agree.
So
interesting. This guy has won a lot, and he's doing a hell of a job recruiting right now out in Fresno as well. So
yeah,
we'll see if he can keep things going because Fresno State's had good teams in the past. Hopefully, they will continue their run and be back because I think college football is better when Fresno State is good. I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce our guest, and we're going to bring him on right now and pop him into the mix.
Well, today we're going to have Ryan THELWELL with us. Those of you remember Ryan, the All Big Ten receiver from the University of Minnesota via Canada. And Ryan, it's great to have you here, my friend.
What's going on, fellas? How you guys doing?
We're doing good, Ryan.
I got to apologize up front. I had to shut the camera off. We were out celebrating that Air Force win yesterday, and trying to act like I was 21 years old again. It's not working.
Buddy, hey, you don't have to tell me. I hung him up a long time ago. I was kind of one of those guys that either had 30 or 0, and I finally got to the point where it had to be 0 from now on. I'm
with you. I am with you.
But pretty good game you guys got to see. What did you think about Air Force and their team as a whole after watching them yesterday?
You know what? It was quite the experience. You know, coming from Canada, you hear about the Air Force academies, the armies, the navies, but to actually witness it in in live and in person was absolutely amazing. The history, the tradition, the team. The funny part about the game is, we're watching the game, and before you know it, they've got 49 points on the board, and it's like, well, where the heck did it get? Where did that come from? Their offense is so methodical. The way that the discipline. I know, Bonnie, you mentioned the discipline that they play with. It's absolutely amazing. And for me, and I know we've talked about this, Bonnie, I think it's something that we're going to try to do every year, to get out and watch these boys play, because they're quite the team.
Definitely. Well, hey, Thel, one thing I we've talked about this, but just for our listeners' sake, what was your process? I mean, coming from Canada to the United States to get recruited. I mean, what was that like from your perspective? Because, I mean, most people just think about it from people that just came from the States. I mean, explain that process to me of, one, your football journey growing up in Canada and how you got to Minnesota itself.
Well, it's crazy because, back in the mid 90s, there weren't a lot of Canadians that were going down. So for me, and I was a basketball guy. That was my first love. Played basketball at a very high level. Like, I was playing on the Ontario provincial team. And to put it, for you guys, that would be playing for a state team. The Ontario provincial team, we would travel, play in other provinces. So we ended up going down to the Empire State Games in New York, which really opened up my eyes. It's just showed me that I was a good player, but I just wasn't at that level. And so got back. I hadn't played football up to that point.
Really?
This is my last year, going into my last year in high school, and a bunch of my buddies played. And the crazy thing is that we had a good high school football team. We could play with teams. We would actually go down to Pennsylvania and play teams and win. Wow. We had gone 7 years without losing a game, like scoring 70 points on teams. So, I decided, what? I'm going to give it a shot. All my boys were playing. The football players seemed to get all the ladies. So I figured, why not? I do it. And so started playing. Our coaches would go down to football clinics every year. One of the clinics that they would go to was TCU. Yeah. And this was when Jim Wacker and his crew were there. And so they built a relationship with the staff, just going down every year. And, I still remember the day, probably 6 or 7 day games in, my coach saying, "Hey, like, you're pretty good football player. Like, you could play if you really applied yourself. You could probably play at another level." I never believed it, but it's funny how things work. I remember the first coach. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was with Eastern Illinois, and he had come into London, Ontario to see me, and it wasn't playing. It was just he wanted to meet me. So I remember going into my coach's office, and there's this coach, and he gives me the once over, and he says to me, and I wasn't that big. Like, I was tall. I was 6'1", but I was probably 170 pounds. So he goes, I've seen bigger wings on a bucket of chicken. I remember that like it was yesterday. And I was so bothered because this guy who had never seen me play, he's judging me based on my physical appearance. And I remember driving home with my brother that, like, after meeting this guy, and it was just one of those, like, I'll show him. Yeah. And then that's when I started actually taking it serious. And I remember Minnesota coming to, it was our semifinal game. Noel Mazzoni came out to watch me play. The next morning, I get a call from my coach. "Hey, come on in. Minnesota wants to give you a scholarship." And nice. For me, yeah, it was pretty cool. Like, and for me, again, like, Canadian kid, we were hockey, right? We didn't get much college football. We did get a lot of Michigan games growing up in London, Ontario. But it's one thing to actually watch it on TV, but going down there, it was an eye opener, to say the least.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. You switch over to football. You get some exposure. You start to play well. You get an offer. You pick Minnesota, and then you get down there and you start playing, and you start going to some of these Big Ten stadiums where there's 90, 100,000 people, screaming and carrying on and going nuts. what was your thoughts, and what was it like for you to get entrenched in Big Ten football and see what it was like in the United States, going from stadium to stadium?
It was an eye opener. We went from in high school, like, it's not like we're playing in Texas. This is London, Ontario. We might have 300, 400 people at a game. Like, for example, I remember my first game at the University of Minnesota. It was Penn State,
Yeah.
and they were one of the top. They ended up, I think they were co-national champs that year, but we had 60,000 people at the Metrodome, and I couldn't get over the fact that I was sitting across from, wow, look, that's Joe Paterno and everything that came along with Penn State. And it was pretty cool. Like, I remember a game, we were at Ohio State. It was my first time playing there. And I was so enthralled with what was going on in the stands that I didn't realize that there was a sudden change, a turnover, and the offense was on the field. And I'm looking around like a kid in a candy store, and the coaches come over yelling at me like, "What are you doing? We got a penalty," or they have to call a timeout because we're one guy short. And yeah, so I got in shit about that, but it was pretty cool. Like, I wasn't used to like going to a Madison and getting a police escort, or going to Bonnie, remember we were talking about Northeast Louisiana yesterday? Going down there, and we were treated like rock stars. And so for a kid from London, Ontario, being thrown into this environment, there's certain things that you remember about your time coming up. I'm an old man now. I'm 50. I can't tell you about a lot of the games I played in, but I do remember a lot of the experiences that we had at some stadiums. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Who, after where was the toughest place you think you played at?
Oh wow, just college ball?
Well, heck, I mean, throw CFL and NFL in there too as well. I mean, because let's be honest, there's some stadiums in the NFL that are kind of chaotic too as well. I mean,
yeah.
what are your thoughts going through that?
You got, if I was to say NCAA, I would say playing at the University of Wisconsin. It kind of felt like the fans are right up on you.
Yeah.
And just loud, and the F-bombs and the stuff being the verbal words being thrown at you. It's quite the experience. And again, like, they're loud, they're boisterous, and it's just one of those stadiums that you really, really have to have your game together to win in. And that's something that I didn't get a chance to do. I know the Gophers did it after I left, but that was a tough place to play. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And
yeah,
obviously you went on to play professionally, and you said you hadn't played football a whole lot till you got later on in your high school years and then into college. Talk to some of our listeners a little bit about the Canadian League. You had a lot of success there, played in the Canadian Football League for a long time, won 3 Grey Cups. Tell some of our listeners what the Canadian Football League is like, and what kind of passion the fans have for it up there.
Oh my goodness. If you've never had a chance to attend a CFL game, even watch it. It's the one thing about the league. We're talking about tradition and pageantry of say Air Force.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't know the CFL is probably one of the oldest sports leagues in North America. Like the Grey Cup has been around for over 110 years.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of history behind it, and it's Canadians are proud of their league. So for me, growing up in Canada and having a chance to play in the league, it was absolutely amazing. You get to see places, for example, Saskatchewan. We talk about we were talking about this yesterday, Goldie. Their fans are rabid. I don't think that I can go anywhere. I'm sure I saw a Riders jersey at the Air Force game yesterday. That's how passionate their fans are. We go to Vegas, we see Rider jerseys. Oh, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah,
we got you.
Yeah, got me. Sorry about that. So yeah, it's just there's so much, and having an opportunity to play in 4 Grey Cups, win 3. There's not a lot of people that can say that they've had that opportunity. So for me, that means a lot. I love the CFL. I try to push it. I try to sell it. I try to tell people, watch. the play, like there are a lot of great CFL players that go down to the NFL. I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
people realize it, and so it's I don't know. I'm a little biased, guys. I'm as a Canadian boy, I love it. I'm proud to be a part of it, and yeah, it's just one of those that I was blessed to do.
How big a struggle was that to go from, I mean, because the rule changes are just slight,
Yeah,
to make that transition from, American rules to the CFL rules?
it wasn't that tough for me. I think just growing up and watching the game, I always knew everything about it. Um, the game is a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
As your fans, they might not know the field is wider, and longer. The end zones are 20 yards, not 10. And
Yep.
so the play clock's only 20. So you've got to be in really good shape to play that game. And so for me, the one thing that I noticed was my weight. I was a little bit heavier coming out of the NFL. But once I came down and got settled in, I dropped about 10 pounds. It was just second nature to me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and Ryan, you obviously, you're from Canada, so
Yes.
you probably felt a little bit more at home than some of these guys. Tell us a little bit what it's like for some of these dudes that are, from America and never have been to Canada, and then all of a sudden, they get released from the NFL, they get an offer, they go up to Canada and want to play.
Yep.
There's been a bunch of guys like that. Vernon Adams Jr.
Yep.
From Oregon, and Braylon Addison, another guy that I think about, and Troy Smith, a guy I know from Ohio State who went up there and played for a little bit. Just talk to us a little about what it's like for them if they've never been up there, never really played or watched Canadian football, and then all of a sudden they find themselves up there. What's life like for them?
You know what? It's a bit of a learning experience. If you've never been up, if you've never played the game, there's an extra guy that you've got to account for. So there are just little bits and pieces that if you're not familiar with it, like for example, there's a 5 yard, every punt is returned and you got to give them a 5 yard halo. So every year, every training camp, we know that there's going to be an American guy that comes in that will just skirt that rule and hit a guy. And that's a 15-yard penalty. So it's just small bits and pieces. I feel like there are a lot of guys that come up and they think that it's a bush league and it's going to be a cakewalk, and they learn pretty quickly that there are guys up here that can play.
Yeah.
All the American guys that come up have all pretty much spent time in the NFL, right? So it's not like you're gonna show up and just dominate. Like I remember when I don't know if you guys remember this, but Ricky Williams took a bit of sabbatical and he came up. He got his butt handed to him.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, they everybody thought he was going to come in and he was going to run shot over the league, and he struggled. And I think he actually went back to the NFL after his after he was reinstated, and he was one of the top running backs in the NFL.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a different game, and you
Well,
get used to it.
Raheem Ismail.
Yeah.
I mean, as ballyhooed as he was coming out, and I mean, he's fast, but I mean, his game really didn't fit the CFL style. Now, it seems like this one always gets, like you're talking about the halo rule.
Yeah.
How there's no downing it in the end zone on kicks and punts. You got to take it out. And that's like once a year you see that on ESPN now. And people now understand what the rouge is. So
it's interesting. Like just certain things. So if you're not familiar with the Grey Cup, again, it's been around for over 100 years. The Grey Cup actually says, if you were to read it, it says Canadian Rugby Championship. Wow. And so the game was based off of rugby. Yeah. So hence the footballs are a bit bigger, and the rouge, that's where the rouge comes from. So again, that just speaks to the history of the game. But yeah, to me, it's such a unique game. You look at what Oregon or a lot of these, and I think Troy Aikman might have referred to it last week. A lot of these teams, like the Oregons and those teams that run the read option, like that we've been doing that in the CFL for over 50. It's nothing new for us, right? It's just a variation of the CFL game. So we get a little chuckle about it when when Oregon was making it the new fad, and we're like, hey, guys, we've been doing this thing forever. So it's just funny for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, I want to ask you, going back to college football. I don't know how
Yes.
much you pay attention to college football now in the United States, but it's changed a lot.
Yep.
And the last few years, they've made it where you can transfer around and you can go to different schools, and there's no sitting out anymore, and you can get paid and get money. Just want to know your thoughts on how college football has changed and what you think about the new rules or lack thereof.
Do you know what? It's crazy to me. We were actually chatting about it yesterday. It's I don't know if it's I feel like it's good for the game as a university player. When back in the day when I was playing, we had some tough times. Like there were days where we were going where we didn't eat and we didn't know where it sounds silly. I know there were uh, meal halls and stuff like that, but these kids today, we were watching the Buffalo game yesterday, and these kids are standing on the sidelines with the gold chains, the glasses. It's business. I just think that it's going to create more disparity. The rich are going to get richer because they've got the money behind them, and then the poor are going to get poor, and kids are going to be choosing schools based on the amount of money that they can make. And I just there's something to be said about sticking with one team. You see kids that are on their third, fourth teams, right? So it gets tougher and tougher for the fan base to actually get to know the play, to know the guys when they're jumping around. So to me, it remains to be seen. I'm happy for the players because they are making money, but at the same time, I kind of feel like it's just going to grow that gap between the top teams and the mid teams and the lower teams. So it remains to be seen. That's just my thoughts on it.
Just thinking about through your entire career, because it was kind of just hit me in the head that Kevin Sumlin was your position coach at the U.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously he's gone to be head coach at multiple places. And, through your pro career and in NFL and CFL, who was the one coach or player or person that I think really got through to you and kind of helped motivate you? And what was that information they gave to you?
You know what? One thing about playing as long as I've played, I've had a lot of great coaches. I've got to say it's got to be Wally Buono. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Wally, but Wally is a CFL coaching legend. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson speaks about how Wally changed his career, and he was just that guy. Wally, when Wally moved to BC in 2003, the BC Lions, he took over as head coach, and we were struggling. And we call it the Wally effect. As soon as we signed him, season tickets doubled. And I just remember he was just one of those guys where he was a straight shooter. He told you like it was. And I prefer a coach like that. Like I'd played in places where coaches would be like, man, Ryan, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. And then you're cut the next day. Yeah. Right. And with Wally, you knew where you stood. And I respected that. And he's just one of those guys that, if you did what you're supposed to do, and he was a player's guy. You do what you're supposed to do. You do your job. And I remember him once saying, this was training camp was about to kick off, and it was our very first meeting. And Wally comes in and he says, "Hey guys, like you veterans, like my job is to because he was a GM as well. My job is to replace you guys. Just so you know, I'm constantly trying to replace you, and your job is to not let me do it." And I've always remembered that. He's constantly trying to replace you, trying to find better people, and it just makes you understand where he's coming from his perspective, but you know where you stand, right? And I love that guy. We still talk to this day, so he's an amazing man.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think kids, especially younger kids, appreciate the honesty and appreciate hearing where they're at. I know I would. And I did when I played. I wanted to know, where I was and what I was doing. But just one more facet about the college football thing. We're obviously a college football show here, and things are changing even more. They're doing, they're basically the Pac-12, which I've always loved watching the Pac-12. That conference is now gone after this year, and all these teams. You played in the Big Ten. you had a hell of a career at Minnesota catching balls out there, and now the Big Ten is going to be a super conference. And
Yeah.
I just want to get your thoughts on, you talked about going to Ohio State and going to Wisconsin and going to Penn State and all those places. Well, now these kids are going to go to LA and play UCLA, and they're going to go to the Coliseum and play USC.
You know what?
That's just kind of crazy, isn't it?
It is, and I'm a traditionalist, and I love the old Big Ten. And even now, when I watch, Rutgers and Maryland, and I'm glad. Don't get me wrong, it's great, but I'm just not used to it, and so it's just one of those things where it's. I know the game's changing. It's good for the game. It's all about the money. I'm a bit of I'm old school. I kind of like the old way of how it was done, and so for me, I'm not a big fan of it. But again, it's progress. It's going to constantly change. It's just something that we expect. So,
yeah.
Hey Ryan, when you came to Minnesota, did you ever think a bell, an axe, a jug, or a pig would mean as much to you as it does now?
Never. I remember going into these games like, what are these guys talking about? A pig? What? But yeah, again, it's something to be said about history and tradition. And now when I watch these games, and my buddies from Canada, they're looking at it like, what is this? It's ridiculous. But yeah, that's just it. Again, for me, that's just a part of it, and I love it. I try to get as much as in terms of, even I think Wisconsin games. That's my thing. If I can catch a Wisconsin game, that's it. But that tradition, that history, man, we don't get that up here, and it's something that we love. So
yeah, no doubt. It's that's what we were just talking about earlier. We love the passion that people have for college football. Me and James have both loved it for our whole lives, and it's just something that people really get excited about. They build their weekends around it in the fall, and just to see. I went to a game a couple of years ago where I live in Knoxville, Tennessee now. I'm a Buckeye fan, but I live in Tennessee now. And Tennessee played Virginia Tech at Bristol, which is a NASCAR racetrack. And they had 180,000 people there. And I got to tell you, it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. So, I think, we all love this game, but I think the pageantry of it is kind of what I like. The NFL is cool. It's fun to watch games on TV, but going to a college football game, I think, is what separates it. Don't you?
I agree. And it's crazy. I got to give your guy credit here, Bonnie. We've obviously we've been spending the weekend here and taking in the sights here at Colorado Springs, and he knows his football.
He does. He does.
I don't think I've ever met somebody that knows so much about college football. We are going through, we're talking about games just random, and he's talking about players from these teams that I don't even know half of these teams. So Bonnie, I got to give you credit, brother. You know your stuff.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, we used to have him on this show, and I'm like, hell, he knows more than the host that I have. I was like, let's get that guy out of here. We got to get Bonneville to replace him. I was like, he knows more than anybody. So yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
But Ryan, thank you so much, man, for coming on with us today. I really enjoyed hearing from you and getting a chance to meet with you.
No, thank you guys. I truly appreciate it. And Bonnie, man, thank you, brother. Taking in that game with you made my experience a lot better. So I appreciate it. And thank you for having me.
Hey,
all right, man.
Thanks, Ryan.
Talk to you soon.
Now,
all right, man.
Well, talk about his basketball prowess. He was on our intramural basketball team. Man, he was so good. Holy crap. Like when he talked about that before, I mean, it was amazing how good he was.
Yeah, I remember him from back in the day, but time goes by and your memories all get jarbled. So I went back and looked and found some film and read up. This guy had a storied career at Minnesota and had over almost 2,300 yards receiving, over 16 touchdowns, and really made his mark to the point where a lot of Gopher fans and Big Ten faithful remember this dude, and then went on to have a very successful career, in the NFL and also the Canadian League. So I'm glad we got a chance to bring him back out and introduce him to some people that may not have been around at that time, because
absolutely,
dude was a baller.
Well, I mean, heck, I go back to the Penn State game in 19 where Bateman had that big yardage game. Well, he was very close to breaking Ryan's all-time single-game record. I mean, Crawford was with me for the game, and every time he got closer, we both kept looking at that stat like we wanted Ryan to keep that record. So,
yeah, and he still has it, right?
Yeah, still has it.
Yeah.
Still has it.
What was the numbers? I'm trying to remember. I saw that.
He had, I think it was like 14. It was 14 for 222.
222.
I
That sounds right.
think. I know it was over 200.
Yeah, and you know the U, as you call it, is known kind of for their running backs, but they've had some sneaky good wide receivers throughout the years, as me and you talked about. You know, Ron Johnson and Tyler. You know, more recently Tyler, and then you know, Eric Decker, who went on to have a fabulous career. That guy was also a baller of a baseball player too, if I remember correctly.
He was.
So they've had good wideouts.
Ryan's other receiver on his team was Tutu Atwell, who you
Yes.
may know his son, LA Ram, Tutu Atwell.
Yes.
Yeah. Corey Sauter was their quarterback. People probably forget the name Chris Darkins, who was an amazing running back.
Yeah, no doubt. And just awesome to we try and, you know, break down all the current college football action and give our takes on that. But I also like to talk about the history of college football. And we really try and do that on this show, where we mix in a little bit of both, where we, you know, talk about the future, we talk about the current state, and then we try and sprinkle in. We're so old now, James, that, you know, we've got all these archives in our memory that, you know, some of these young kids, they don't know anything about. So it's our job, I feel like, to let them know.
Well, I mean, hell, we were sitting there talking about the CFL. I mean, most people don't even remember Warren freaking Moon.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Doug Flutie, Warren Moon. I mean, Cameron Wake. There's been a lot of guys that cut their teeth in the CFL, or, you know, started in the NFL and then went to the CFL and had storied careers. So it goes both ways.
Absolutely.
So which games, going back to the current, which games next week are really sticking out to you for week 6? You know, we got Oklahoma, Texas, obviously. You know, LSU, Missouri. Some people are talking about, you know, Alabama, Texas A&M. Which games to you are really sticking out?
You know, I mean, besides the obvious ones, Alabama A&M. You know, I think if A&M's going to be for real, that's got to be the game that they got to circle on their calendar. And, you know, Jimbo's had success against Saban. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. I personally like the Washington State at UCLA game. The Pac-12 is just, my fear is that everybody's going to beat everybody and nobody gets into the freaking playoff, which would be a shame for that conference. Those two games really kind of started off for me, because there's a lot of games. There's like possible, you know, things that could happen, but all depends on injuries too as well. Has game day been announced yet at all or not?
I don't know. I don't watch that crap anymore. Big noon kickoff for Fox is going to be in Columbus for the Maryland Ohio State game, and I got to tell you, that game is going to be a closer, tougher contest than people think. Maryland is a team that is another one that's 5-0 and gets no credit. They get no love. They get no publicity. No one speaks about them, but they've got a quarterback who's thrown for almost 1,500 yards in 5 games. He's got 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's played a lot of football. This kid is for real. And the Maryland offense is for real, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, Talia plays a lot like his brother. And I think he doesn't get near the pub he should, because he plays at Maryland. If he was at Alabama, we'd be probably having the first round conversation, but he's got first round abilities.
Yeah, I agree. I can see this guy being an NFL quarterback easily.
I mean, think about how much better, Maryland would be.
think he was in the middle of a thought there, but I cannot hear you, Bunny. Bunny, I lost you there for a second, buddy. But I do think that's going to be a really good game, Maryland, Ohio State. And then another one that I think bodes watching is the Kentucky and Georgia game. You know, every year we talked about, Kentucky comes out of the gate strong, and then they get into the meat of their schedule and they fall apart a little bit. But that's another one. But James, you hear us? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay,
I got you.
Finish your thought, please.
I don't even remember where I was at. Must not have been that important. But honestly, I think a lot of these teams. Man, I'm just happy to be awake right now. I'm tired, man. This has been a long week. Oh, if anybody ever gets a chance, you got to see the opening pageantry at an Air Force game. Watching the cadets go down the tunnel to go out to the field. Both locker rooms go through that. The last thing you see is the sign about how you're entering over 7,000 feet above sea level. I mean, you can feel it. I mean, the air's a little lighter up here.
No, that's why I was talking to Ryan about it. Somebody posted a video today about, the Virginia Tech entrance and Enter Sandman. I mean, Virginia Tech's been down, let's be honest, pretty much since Frank Beamer left. But their fans are still crazy. You know, here where I live now, the running through the T. There's just so much tradition and pageantry of college football. It's it's more than just a game. It's it's really important to these people. I was going on my walk last night at like 12:30, almost 1 a.m, and they were still doing the post-game show here on the local fan-run radio about the Tennessee-South Carolina game, and they were still talking about the game. I'm like, the game's been over for 4 hours, 3 hours, and they're still breaking it down because these people care so much. So, brutal injury also for the Vols yesterday. Brew McCoy broke his ankle on just a disgusting play, and I feel bad for that kid because he is really, really put together a solid career since he got here to Knoxville from transferring from USC, and I wish the best for him. South Carolina is just a horrible football team. I feel bad for Spencer Rattler, man. I mean, they've got some good pieces. They've got a really good wide receiver in what's his name, Xavier Leggett. And they've got a really good running back in Mario Anderson and a pretty damn good quarterback in Spencer Rattler. And then then you look at their offensive line, and it is just a disaster. I think they had 6 sacks last night and at least 8 or 10 tackles for loss. I mean, it was just a dumpster fire for the Gamecocks. So I'm not sure where they're going from here. But Tennessee, to me, played a pretty good game. And I'm interested to see. I'm going to be at the game next week live for the Texas A&M Tennessee game. Well, actually, that's the week after, the 14th of October. So I'll get a chance to see Jimbo and also see the Vols in person. So it should be interesting.
Great.
All right, boss. Well, keep it up. Go get some rest.
Yeah.
And go drink some water and make sure you recoup yourself. Because we're gonna need you. We got a bunch more. We got a bunch more games to get through here.
Well, we got to get through Red River, man. I mean, that's going to be the last Red River in the Big 12 before their SEC teams.
Yeah, I hope they keep playing every year. That's one thing that I really do. You can change college football. That's fine, but let's keep some of the tradition too. I mean, these teams are still in the same conference. They can keep playing. I think a lot of the Big Ten traditions are going to continue, and then also there'll be new ones added. I mean, Ohio State's got a really good history playing USC, and so does Penn State and some of the other teams. So now they can play them even more, and I think that's cool. But I do want to keep I want to keep that Red River rivalry. If you say that 5 times fast, keep that going because I always love watching that game. It just seems to mean a little bit more for those kids, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
All right, bud. Keep your chin up. And great show today. I love breaking it down. Great guest, having a former Big Ten wide receiver and 3-time Grey Cup champion from the CFL with Ryan coming and joining us. So go check it out. Go to our YouTube page. If you missed any of the other shows, we've had some ballers on the last few weeks. And Man Coverage 2075, type it in, and you've got access to all those. James, thanks for your time, and keep your chin up. Go get some rest, buddy.
Thank you much. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good, bud.
Later.